So how can one man be a fire-breathing, anti-colonial revolutionary, a radical social reformer who fought the caste system, and the architect of a hugely controversial nationalist ideology? Well, that's the puzzle of Vinayak Damodar Savarkar, one of modern India's most consequential and, let's be honest, divisive figures. In this explainer, we're going to try and unpack the man behind the many, many myths.
Right off the bat, to even begin to understand Savarkar, you just have to embrace the contradictions. He was hailed as a revolutionary prince early on, yet he died a political pariah, a social reformer who attacked caste, who then became the key ideologue of Hindutva. He praised Hindu-Muslim unity in the 1857 uprising, but later argued they were, in fact, two separate nations. These aren't just little footnotes in his story, they are the story. So let's trace how these conflicting ideas took shape, and we'll start with the revolutionary.
All right, let's dive into Act 1, The Revolutionary. This is a story of a young man forged in the fires of colonial India who decided pretty early on that the only answer to the British Empire was its violent overthrow.
And his path to revolution was just breathtakingly fast. I mean, think about it. In just 10 years, he goes from a local secret society in 1899 to a nationwide network modeled on these big European revolutionary movements. By 1906, he's not even just in India anymore, he takes the fight directly to London, the very heart of the empire. And by 1909, his network is being linked to political assassinations on 2 different continents. This wasn't just protest, this was coordinated, armed insurrection.
You know, India House in London, it wasn't just some student hostel. Under Savarkar's leadership, it became a full-blown academy for revolution. He mentored a whole generation of radicals, organized bomb-making workshops, even got help from Russian revolutionaries, and he masterminded smuggling pistols into India. One of those very pistols was used to assassinate a British official back in Nasik.
In this quote, this really gets to the core of it. Reportedly drafted by Savarkar for an assassin, it reveals his whole revolutionary ideology. For him, political violence wasn't just a strategy, it was a religious and national duty. That framing shows you a mind that saw armed struggle as the only truly legitimate path to liberation.
Then in 1910, after being arrested in London, Savarkar attempts one of history's most daring escapes. Picture this, his ship is docked in Marseille, France. He squeezes through a tiny porthole in a toilet, dives into the harbor and swims to French soil hoping for political asylum. Now, he was caught, but his rearrest on sovereign French territory by British police, it sparked a huge international legal battle that went all the way to The Hague, making him a global symbol of the Indian cause.
That failed escape, it really marked the end of Savarkar the revolutionary. But his capture began a whole new chapter, one that would take place in the crucible of a brutal prison, and it would fundamentally reshape his entire worldview. This is Act 2.
The sentence that was handed down was just unheard of for a political prisoner. 2 consecutive life sentences, that's 50 years, and he was sent to the most notorious penal colony in the entire British Empire, the cellular jail in the Andaman Islands.
The conditions in the cellular jail, they were designed to completely break a person. Solitary confinement, grueling labor that was literally meant for animals. But even when he was deprived of pen and paper, his mind remained his weapon. He composed and memorized thousands of lines of poetry, literally scratching them onto the prison walls with thorns. He just refused to let his intellect be extinguished.
Now, this period in prison led to the most debated actions of his entire life, the clemency petitions he wrote. The interpretation of these letters is, to this day, deeply polarized. His supporters see them as a brilliant political tactic, a strategic retreat to get out of jail and rejoin the fight, much like the famed Maratha king Shivaji had famously done. His critics, however, see them as nothing short of a surrender, a betrayal of all his revolutionary ideals.
So he was released from prison in 1924, but he was still confined to the Ratnagiri district and totally banned from politics. So Savarkar pivots. He turns his attention from an external enemy, the British, to what he saw as an internal one. He launched a full frontal assault on the weaknesses within Hindu society, starting with the caste system.
From his confinement, Savarkar identified what he called the 7 shackles that were holding Hindu society back. He targeted everything from untouchability to bans on intermarriage. His goal was radical social unity. He organized community meals where Brahmins and Dalits ate side by side, which was an absolutely unthinkable act for so many at the time. For him, a strong nation could only be built after you break these internal chains.
And the most concrete symbol of this reformist passion was the Patit Pavan Mandir. Now, this wasn't just a temple where Dalits were eventually allowed to enter. No, it was designed from day one to be open to every single Hindu. And to really drive the point home, he appointed a non-Brahmin priest, a direct and really powerful challenge to centuries of religious hierarchy.
What was driving all these reforms was his fierce, almost brutal rationalism. He famously challenged the sacred status of the cow, arguing that sure, it's a highly useful animal, but worshipping it was a murder of the intellect. For Savarkar, progress and national strength depended on abandoning blind faith and embracing a modern scientific temper.
Okay, so these ideas of social unity and scientific temper, they weren't just about reform. They were actually the foundation for his final and most influential role. When his travel restrictions were finally lifted in 1937, he re-entered politics, but not as a revolutionary. This time, he was the chief ideologue of a new political vision. And this is Act 3.
His central concept was Hindutva, which he laid out in his book of the same name. For Savarkar, a Hindu was not just someone who followed a particular religion. A Hindu was someone for whom India was both their fatherland, their Pitri Bhumi, and, this is the critical part, their holy land, their Punya Bhumi. This cultural national definition became the absolute bedrock of Hindu nationalist thought.
So in 1937, Savarkar famously declared that Hindus and Muslims were two nations. Now, while that phrase sounds exactly like the one used by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, their meanings were fundamentally different. Savarkar was describing what he saw as a cultural reality, two nations living within one country. Jinnah used that same idea to demand a completely separate territorial state, Pakistan. And what's crucial to remember here is that Savarkar remained a staunch opponent of actually partitioning the country.
During World War II, this pragmatic and often really controversial approach was on full display. While the Indian National Congress launched the Quit India movement against the British, Savarkar urged Hindus to enlist in the British Indian Army. What was his logic? He saw it as a God-given opportunity to receive military training, which he believed was absolutely essential for Hindus to be able to defend India after independence.
After India's independence in 1947, Savarkar found himself pretty much politically sidelined. His life then took another dramatic turn when he was arrested as a co-conspirator in the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi. Now, although that accusation cast a very long shadow over his reputation, he was ultimately acquitted by the court because of a lack of evidence.
So let's try to put all this together. His intellectual legacy really rests on four connected pillars. First, Hindutva, this idea of a cultural national identity. Second, Punya Bhumi, the powerful idea of India as a shared holy land. Third, a relentless push for a scientific temper to modernize the nation. And finally, the foundational belief that true national strength was impossible without radical social reform, especially destroying the caste system. These weren't separate ideas, they were all parts of a single unified vision for a new India.
Which brings us right back to our central question. A firebrand revolutionary, a radical social reformer, and the father of an ideology that continues to shape India to this very day. He defied easy labels in his own time, and his legacy is more fiercely debated now than ever before. Revolutionary, reformer, ideologue, or something else entirely. The final verdict, it seems, is still being written.